Trailblazers, welcome back to another episode. Do you think Americans are more informal and outgoing while Brits are more private and reserved? Many times instinctively we want to answer to this question in the affirmative and say that it's true. But then people might get defensive and think that we're being stereotypical. So that's what my lesson is about today. Isn't it important that we teach our students as ESL teachers about social English and cultural awareness? After this intro, we'll talk about it. Alright, and we're back. So social English and cultural awareness, that's my episode for today. I'm Nan, this ESL Trailblazer. Welcome back. Let's make something happen. So I want to get right into it. And basically what I said with that introduction question was, what should we be aware of? And one of the first things that people will say when you might ask a question like that and you might answer in a stereotypical way, a person might say, well, it depends on religious views or ethnicity or the region you come from or your age, etc., etc. So there's a lot of factors involved, and basically what it comes down to is this: to recognize, for all of us, teachers and students, that we recognize that the way we think and the way we behave is not the only way, right? And that's the most important thing. And how can we get our students to recognize this as they learn to become international citizens? Because learning English for them is what we're preparing them to be as we become a more globalized world. And as teachers, we work around the globe teaching English, so we also need to be aware of these differences, so we could learn something in the process of teaching as well, which is quite amazing, right? So I have some topics that I think we can use in our classes that our students should be aware of and that can help us be better teachers. Let's get started right away. So the first one is live to work versus work to live. Live to work is describing how status is determined by professional achievement, right? Whereas work to live is about a well-rounded life, stress-free, without work being the center. Okay? The next one is order versus flexibility. Order is referring to how the rules are the rules and you need to follow them, whereas flexibility is about that it's okay to maybe ignore or break the rules sometimes based on maybe your conscience or the context or your friends. So right there, those first two topics should provide some great material for lessons with students. Some might be need to be age appropriate, but you can definitely incorporate some language about work and about rules when introducing these speaking topics, okay? The next one is hierarchical versus democratic. So in some societies, cultures, nations, hierarchy is very important. You need a clear leader who gives instructions, and we get these instructions from above, and that's how we're able to do our jobs properly. Whereas the democratic way of thinking might be power should be distributed and everyone's opinion is important. So that's a very good one for anybody who does in-company lessons, I think. And plenty to discuss there, and a lot of language can come out of it. The next one is welcoming risk versus avoiding risk. And I love doing this topic. There's a great video up here that you should check out about risk. I've done an episode on it. And welcoming risk, well, it means go for it. Whereas avoiding risk, better safe than sorry. So that one is also a great one with vocabulary. Fantastic collocations that go with risk and a lot of language in general that we can describe big and small risks. Again, check out that other episode. And then you can get into the nitty-gritty of the topic, because living in Poland, for instance, and I've talked about this before, when I ask my students if they're risk takers, a lot of them say no, that they aren't. But if you ask what they consider risky, or you ask what kind of, I don't want to go too deep, but basically students admit that they do take risks, but they don't see it as a risk. And that's an important question to ask in this, okay? And finally, the last one, which I think is very important, is open disagreement versus subtle disagreement. And what I mean by that is that open disagreement is when there's competition between ideas. And that's how we get to the best solution to a problem. Whereas the subtle disagreement is more about nobody wants to lose face publicly. And things need to be discussed very slowly and move ahead slowly. And language like, are you sure about that? Or really is used when you want to disagree. So that last one, I believe a lot of you should be familiar with regards to culture and nationalities and the differences, okay? So I'll go through the topics one more time. It's live to work versus work to live. Order versus flexibility. Hierarchical versus democratic. Welcoming risk versus avoiding risk. And finally, open disagreement versus subtle disagreement. So again, my main reason for bringing this up is not only for teachers and for students, but also natives. When we travel in this global world that we live in, it's important that we cover these areas, whether in one lesson altogether, if our students are mature enough, or separately and maybe in a subtle way, so it doesn't seem like this is covered, but it just comes out from the discussion. Teachers, you know what I'm talking about. And there's great vocabulary involved, and cultural awareness is something that it's on our shoulders, teachers. ESL teachers, we are responsible for this, and I'm sure you agree with that. I'd love your feedback. That's all I have for you today. Trailblazers, the community only grows thanks to your viewership and your feedback and being involved. So please share if you know somebody who finds it valuable. There's plenty of episodes about teaching tips as I keep adding more to the channel. Thank you very much for following. It is a pleasure. Again, I'd love to hear what you think about this, and I'm sure that you guys have some great ideas for lessons on these topics. Have a great week, and I'll see ya. Take care.